This small country store behind me, with a customary crowd of idlers on the front porch, might be found in any small rural American community. But the dirt road that runs parallel to this small country store marks the beginning of a location in the town of Nelspruit, the African location where natives are forced to live. Nelspruit, a small mining town in the northern Transvaal, has for the past week been the focus of the racial tension in South Africa. It started with a protest march by some 400 native women on the police station. The women have long been more militant in their resistance to apartheid laws in South Africa than have been their menfolk. In reality, Nelspruit is still tense after a week of trouble. Big trouble and violence, even in South Africa. I asked for permission this morning to go inside the location at Nelspruit and make this film. We were told that there's been trouble there lately and they'd rather not have any Europeans go inside.
It's the mid-1900s. Apartheid and segregation is in the Union of South Africa. But a Xhosa man had had enough of it, joining politics in an anti-racial segregation policy. This is the story of Nelson Mandela. Born Rolihlahla Mandela, Nelson was born on July 18, 1918, into a Tambo royal family in Mvizo, Union of South Africa. His father was Gadla Henry Mfakanishwa, and his mother was Nonkafi Nosekeni. Nelson Mandela studied law at the University of Fort Hare and the University of Witwatersrand. After that, he became a lawyer in Johannesburg. There, in 1943, he found himself in anti-colonialism and African nationalism politics. He then joined the African National Congress, or ANC, and later in 1944 he co-founded the ANC Youth League with Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Anton Lambede, and Ashby Peter Salamzi Ndal. From 1914 to 1997, there was a political party in the Union of South Africa called the Nationalist Party. It set up a white-only governmental system and started apartheid, a racial segregation system that privileged white people. Mandela could not let this continue, so he and the ANC made it their goal to get rid of this system in South Africa. From 1910 to 1994, there was a province in South Africa called Transvaal, which had its own ANC branch, which Nelson Mandela was made the president of. Then, in 1952, Nelson Mandela got involved with the Defiance Campaign, which was a large conference held in Bloemfontein to try and get rid of apartheid laws in the Union of South Africa. After that, on the 26th of June, 1955, the Congress of the People was held in Kliptown, which was a gathering to share the view of South African people set up by the ANC. Mandela was arrested repeatedly for sedition, which is the crime of speech compelling people to rebel against an established government. Mandela was also unsuccessfully prosecuted in the 1956 treason trial, which was held in Johannesburg, where Nelson Mandela and 155 other people were arrested for treason. The trial went until 1961 and brought attention from other countries to what was happening in South Africa with apartheid and the ANC's goal to get rid of it. On March 21st, 1960, in the town of Sharpeville in the Union of South Africa, there was a group of 7,000 protesters protesting against anti-black laws. They started protesting at the police station. The events are mixed. Some say the protesters were peaceful, while others say they were throwing stones at the police. After the events of the police station, the South African police opened fire, killing a total of 249 people. Mandela created the Umkhonto we Sizwe, which was a paramilitary wing of the ANC. Its goal was to fight against the South African government. In 1961, to strike against the government, Nelson Mandela led a sabotage campaign, which led to his arrest in 1962 with the Rivonia trial, where many people from the 1956 treason trial were put back on trial. Nelson Mandela was put in prison for life for trying to overthrow the government. Throughout his 27-year sentence, he went between 3 different prisons: Robben Island, Pollsmoor Prison, and finally Victor Verster Prison. On February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela was released by President Frederick Willem de Klerk because of growing tension and pressure between black and white people of South Africa. Many people were scared that there could be a civil war between the 2 races.
In pursuance of my opening address to Parliament, I am now in a position to announce that Mr. Nelson Mandela will be released at the Victor Verster Prison on Sunday, the 11th of February at about 3 p.m.
After his release, Mandela worked with F.W. de Klerk to end apartheid.
Paralyzes individuals by imposing bans on them and intensifies oppression and carries on a brutal suppression of all political activities. What do you expect us to do? We must resort to violence in order to defend ourselves. But many people, especially in the West, seem to be blinded to this reality, that we ought not to have a path of violence. We ought not to continue with violence when we're negotiating. We know better because we are the people who are responsible for this negotiating process. And we should be telling the world what methods of action should be abandoned and at what time. It is not for the international community to try to lecture us as to what methods of action we should use.
Between the 26th and 29th of April, the 1994 South African general election was held, where the government held the first election where any citizen of any race would be able to vote. The ANC won with 62.65% of the votes, and with Mandela being the leader, he became the first democratically elected president of South Africa on May 10th, 1994.
Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all. Let there be work, bread, water, and salt for all. Let each know that for each, the body, the mind, and the soul have been freed to fulfill themselves. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity of being the scum of the world. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement.
Mandela denied his second term of presidency, and his deputy, Thabo Mbeki, succeeded him as president. After his term, he became an elder statesman and did work to get rid of poverty and HIV and AIDS through his non-profit organization, the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Nelson Mandela did so much for South Africa in his life. He had so many great achievements they couldn't fit into one video. While very few saw him as a communist terrorist, the rest of the people saw him, and still see him, as a hero, activist, and a symbol of democracy and social justice. In South Africa, he is still frequently remembered under Madiba, which is his Tambu clan name. He received over 260 honors, including a Nobel Peace Prize. There is a reason he is called the Father of the Nation. This is a story about perseverance, about never giving up, even when you're at your lowest. It is about spreading kindness and hope across the world to many people. But most importantly, it is about a hero.